The Supreme Court just a short time ago refusing to stop Donald Trump from being sentenced on 34 felony counts tomorrow morning. It is a ruling that came down 5-4 with Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Amy Coney Barrett joining the court's liberals and the majority here. That means that the president-elect, 10 days before he is going to take the oath of office, will formally be sentenced tomorrow as a convicted felon for essentially cooking the books to cover up hush money payments made to a porn star.
We're going to appeal anyway, just psychologically, because frankly, it's a disgrace. It's a judge that shouldn't have been on the case. So I'll do my little thing tomorrow. They can have fun with their political opponent.
That was Donald Trump tonight at Mar-a-Lago speaking to reporters right after the Supreme Court order came down. And we get right to CNN's Ellie Honig, who is joining me here. Ellie, you see Donald Trump. He is at Mar-a-Lago there. That means he is going to be appealing virtually to, or appearing virtually tomorrow. We'll get to that in a moment. But on this decision, everyone was waiting to see what it said. Even people in Trump world that I've been talking to were kind of divided on whether or not the Supreme Court was going to take their side. Were you surprised by this?
I was surprised it was this close, Caitlin. We were one vote away from the U.S. Supreme Court preventing Donald Trump from getting sentenced by Zoom to nothing. I mean, that would have damaged the Supreme Court's credibility beyond all recognition. And I think the opinion that came down 5-4, letting the sentencing go, I think it was perfectly sound. Basically, the justices in the majority said two things. First of all, they said, what's the harm? You're going to get sentenced to 0. You can do it by Zoom. You can roll out of bed and do it. And second of all, you do maybe have substantial issues. I think he has substantial issues on appeal, but you can handle them through the full appeal process that will follow your sentencing.
They're saying you don't need to do this right now. There are normal channels to handle this through, but Trump just doesn't want it to happen before he becomes president.
And you know what's maybe ironic about it? Trump actually gets a benefit by being sentenced tomorrow, which is once that sentencing is over, as of tomorrow morning, then he can take his full appeals. He can go up the New York Courts of Appeals. He can go maybe to the U.S. Supreme Court and say the charge against me was unconstitutional, which I think it may be. He can say that the jury was not properly instructed. But if he had gotten his way, if he was not sentenced tomorrow, he would not have been able to appeal. That would have been it. So this sentence would have sort of died in netherworld.
Well, and part of their argument had been that it was going to be too tough for him to get sentenced tomorrow, that he couldn't show up to the sentencing in New York. The justices made a point, the 5 who ruled that this could happen, and said that it was relatively insubstantial in light of what the court is saying that they're going to do, which is to impose that sentence of unconditional discharge. And it's a brief virtual hearing. He doesn't have to be there in person tomorrow.
So this was a smart move by Judge Merchan, because he said last week, I'm going to sentence you to essentially nothing, and you can do it by Zoom. If Merchan had not done that, if he just said, appear for sentencing Friday, it'll be like any other sentencing. You don't know what you're going to get until I tell you. That might have changed the Supreme Court's calculus, because Trump's argument was, I could be subject to what we call irreparable harm. And if Trump was able to say, I don't know, maybe this guy's going to try to lock me up. Maybe he's going to impose some serious penalty. Maybe I don't have the time as president-elect to travel to New York and sit in a courtroom and go through security. Instead, Merchan absolutely minimized that.
Okay, so he appears virtually via, I'll call it Zoom. I don't even know what it is for the court system. When you get sentenced, you have an option to say something, right?
You just hit on what the biggest point is going to be to watch for tomorrow. Any defendant at sentencing absolutely has a right to speak. Almost always they do. So Trump might say, I have nothing to say, Your Honor, or he might give us a rant. I mean, I would bet on that because, look, he's got nothing to lose. He knows he's getting sentenced to nothing. So
even
watch
if he speaks before the sentencing and goes off on the judge, which he does and did tonight, that won't change how Merchan sentences him?
Well, Merchan left himself a tiny bit of wiggle room, right? He didn't say, I promise I will sentence you. He said, I intend to sentence you. But I think it would take an awfully lot to push Merchan from sentence you to unconditional discharge to lashing out with a sentence.
Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Roberts, Alito. They were willing to stop this. Make that argument.
Their argument would be, as a purely procedural matter, Trump was still in the process of appealing based on immunity, right? We got the immunity ruling 6 months ago. And if you look at a certain way procedurally, while you're appealing on immunity as a defendant, you're entitled to a complete stay, meaning no trial, no sentencing, no nothing. But the majority, and again, Amy Coney Barrett and John Roberts joined with the liberals, said, but if there's no harm, there's no harm. And that's really what carried the day here.
So this news, and then right after that, it came down the effort to keep the special counsel's report away from public view. Also, Trump lost on that. They can still appeal it. We'll see what happens. And
we're going to see. I'll spoil that one. We're going to see those reports eventually.
Okay. Well, we might see you back here tomorrow night,
tomorrow.
Ellie Honig. So thank you for that.